And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. We are ready to break the locks.
Stanley!
Yes, fear.
We have to clean about the highway, but you don't know, say Stanley for come go to school now.
How you know I have them out here idle? You see me teach them to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to learn to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to school to learn to spell doctrine.
And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. We are ready to break the locks.
Stanley!
Yes, fear.
We have to clean about the highway, but you don't know, say Stanley for come go to school now.
How you know I have them out here idle? You see me teach them to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to learn to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to school to learn to spell doctrine.
And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. We are ready to break the locks.
Stanley!
Yes, fear.
We have to clean about the highway, but you don't know, say Stanley for come go to school now.
How you know I have them out here idle? You see me teach them to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to learn to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to school to learn to spell doctrine.
And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. There are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out. We're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money not know what you conniving. Money never, money you can keep you conniving money. When you've been a corrupt, in a biz there be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a biz there be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money never, money not know what you conniving money. Neighbor joker, neighbor joker, neighbor joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilda piece. A 2 pound note and a guilda piece. A 2 pound note and a guilda piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money never, money never, money never, money. I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politician they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. It's one set of people getting aisle money. It's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which Jah has ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, they got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Pastor, Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Are you big and tall and feel left out? Well, full spectrum.
Arriving in the UK from Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, or elsewhere, start your journey with ease and comfort by choosing first-class travel service, one of UK's leading providers of premium airport transfers. Enjoy a smooth, stress-free arrival by booking your comfortable and reliable airport taxi before you arrive. With affordable rates and exceptional service, we cover all major UK airports, including Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester, Birmingham, and many more. Wherever you land, we guarantee a seamless door-to-door experience to and from any UK airport. For your peace of mind, all our drivers are fully DBS checked and cleared, ensuring a safe and trustworthy service from the moment you arrive. Our friendly staff will meet and greet you in the airport arrival hall, assist with your luggage, and escort you to one of our luxurious vehicles. So wait no longer. We're ready to look after you from the moment you arrive in the UK. You can contact us via email info@firstclasstravelservice.co.uk, office phone +4 4195 2287 176, WhatsApp +4 479 136 0576 5 or +4 479 009 50171, or simply fill in our request, a quote form, at www.firstclasstravelservice.co.uk. Travel with confidence. Travel first class.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168. T&W Harris Butcher Shop, for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
My Guyana, my Guyana, my Guyana, my Guyana, El Dorado, best of all the world away. In my heart wherever I wander, memory enshrineth thee. All my hopes and aspirations, all my longings, only tie everlasting bonds around us as the fleeting years roll by. My Guyana, El Dorado, my Guyana, time's unfolding and for my destiny. To redeeming lasting splendor, for the years that lost to me, and the dawning of thy glory, for the long, long night is past. Oh, arise, triumphant, glorious, from the ashes of the past. Oh, arise, triumphant, glorious, from the ashes of the past. Guyana, oh my lovely native land, more dear to me than all the world I see washed sun-kissed strand. Pour down upon the borders, looking out upon the deep, the great Atlantic flowed into a fury. For a sleep at morn, at noon, or measuring the crimson sunset's glow. I love thee, I love thee, I love thee. Oh, Guyana, oh, beautiful Guyana, oh, my lovely native land. More dear to me than all the world I see washed sun-kissed strand. Pour down upon the borders, looking out upon the deep, the great Atlantic flowed into a beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our partners to help the land out. Guyana the free. Together, my comrades, we'll build our Guyana. One opportunity. So let us begin now to show loyalty to Guyana. By showing love and respect for all that it means.
My brothers, my sisters, we live together. Among to one people, one nation, one destiny. For harmonious living, cooperation will be forever. It's one that make us live as strong as Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's walk for it with our partner to help the world. Guyana, you're free. Well, it's time we settle all the nations in the interior. Our natural resources are there in great quantity. And we will do farming and establish towns on the corner. With robots, we would belong Guyanese.
My greatest desire is to send my country Guyana, and sincerely love my Guyana to belong. Our government asks us to study higher we love. The things that make Guyana to become strong. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help the world. Guyana, you're free to help the world. Guyana, you're free.
Hello, hi, good morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, are you morning? How are you do? It's 29 minutes to 8 o'clock hour. And it is 25 minutes, it's the 25th day of June in the year 2026. How you been? How was your last night? How was it yesterday? How y'all passed yesterday without me? They say absence make the heart grow fonder. Y'all try it and see if you're not going to be forgotten. Oh, lad, oi. Absence create loopholes. So y'all try the nonsense, but absence making the heart go fonder. How y'all do? How was y'all yesterday? What went on for y'all? Well, I know you've been hearing it. You've been hearing it in the background. And the one unit. So Mr. Abson, I'm playing there. Is a newly coined word. Yes, we have a newly coined word from our doctor of urban development. And so if you didn't believe it, listen to it. Play the thing, man. You're now getting dunce.
And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. We are ready to break the locks.
Yes, dear. We have to clean up out the high because you know, say Stanley can go to school now.
Oh, you know I have them out your eye. You see me teach them to read and write. Johnny, my boy, mama send you to learn.
Planning a party? Worry no more. We have all the supplies you need. At EC Party Rentals, we have folding chairs, folding tables, square tables, round tables, long tables, short tables, big tables. We have chairs, red chairs, gold chairs, white chairs, crystal chairs, chairs of all types. Throne chairs, what you want, we have. Food warmers, coolers, ice, beverages. At EC Party Rentals, we have what you need to have a good time. You plan the party, we do the work. Call us 622-5933. EC Party Rentals. Let's keep your party going.
And if there are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out, we're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity. Reciprocity. We are ready to break the locks.
You gotta be a locksmith. Yes, sir. You have to be a locksmith. if you're gonna break the locks, as a matter of fact, you gotta be a butcher. Not even a surgeon. Normally we associate, you know. Sometimes we can have doctors who are surgeons, but this doctor is a butcher. He's a butcher of the English language. Some of them should be charged for murder. Mass murdering the language that we so embrace and some of us adore. But anyhow, it's not my morning to talk about the president's butchering the language. Reciprocity. When I heard the man say reciprocity, I say reciprocity. I almost started thinking this man needs to be retroprocessed. Right? You see, y'all don't know how to read body language. That is why a lot of y'all believe that the man was loud and proud. And it was his loudness, his pride that caused him to repeat the word no. No, I'm going to play the video and I'm going to tell you what it is. And then I'm going to invite Mr. Jordan in. Some things are so sweet, you just can't let them pass. Mr. Jordan going to forgive us. Right? I want y'all to look at the video and look keenly. I'm going to see if I can pause it at that point where I think he knew. You know, like we just said, when I knew I messed up, go with some other adjectives and so on. I think,
yes, Fear.
look at the video.
We have to clean about the high
I'll stay with you.
go to school now.
How you know I have them out here idle? You see me teaching for read and write.
There are economies in the region that will continue to lock our products out. We're going to break those locks open because we believe in reciprocity.
Watch the pause.
Reciprocity.
Watch the pause. The pause is when the man realized reciprocity. So the second time was the president's questioning himself. Reciprocity. There's a new one, by. There's a new law I have gone to. The man was allowed to himself, as we say, loud and rang. Right? But the repetition there wasn't out of pomposity. It was out of self-doubt. Reciprocity. Right? So, y'all got to learn to read body language and so. I mean, but anyways, that man is butcher. A doctorate in front of the name doesn't make them surgeon, it make them butcher. Butcher the English language. Continues to do that. Somebody suggested that Mia should ask Mia to write the speeches, but I want to ask the question. When Mia writes the speeches, who will read them? Know your lane, man. Stay in your lane. It's as simple as that. And somebody also say, you know, being an international thief doesn't mean you have to have a good command of the English language or any language as a matter of fact. All you gotta do is know for thief. And this is what them banner is. Thief. Them banner is thief. They will thief your soul and all if you allow them. Anyways, I say it's Thursdays, Mr. Jordan Day. Y'all left me alone. Y'all don't forget the protest coming up on the 6th of June. July, that is. Monday the 6th of July. It's CARICOM Day, in case you didn't realize. When I started the days of protests in the years gone by, I always try to do it on CARICOM Day. And so I'm going to restart the agitation, you know. Guyanese got to stand up against this wickedness. And so we're going to do it this year again. CARICOM Day. I'll be outside the box and I don't know where you will be. Mr. Jordan?
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. As good as you have been to us, we would like to ensure that we exchange goodness to you. So we believe in reciprocity too. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Thank you. I see you rebelling in the reciprocity. Is it reciprocity? Retro is going back, not so? Going back to those years and so on. But anyway, I think on reflection, he's going to realize that you either stick to your script that you would have rehearsed on a number of occasions to make certain that you understand the script, you know where the pauses are, the intonations, and everything else, and you avoid words that are going to give you trouble. I don't think he's learned that in almost 6 years of his presidency, and I believe he will continue to make these elementary mistakes. For some of us, these mistakes are elementary. Go ahead.
So, should it be on reflection or retrospection? Over to you, Mr. Jordan. Whatever you say.
Anyway, but he has taken up a lot of our time. I think he's just moved on. But in many ways also, he is a reflection of the state of education in Guyana. Okay? I know many of us growing up back in the day, we would be put at the feet of our parents and we would begin to read certain articles in newspapers. We had access to a number of books, Louis Amour and Agatha Christie. We knew about libraries. We knew about going into the market, Stabroek Market and Le Penitence Market and so on. And they had their own little libraries down there too, where you could borrow books and so on. You had the public free library, as it used to be known in those days. You had John F. Kennedy Library in Main Street and so on. So we had a lot of libraries. Schools had libraries where you were encouraged to read comic books. Used to make the rounds. And so there was a lot. So we came up reading. And we came up also with a high level of numeracy. Right? Very early we knew to say our 2 times tables, or 3 times tables, 4 times, and so on. Those tables always present at the back of exercise books, And in some cases, some of us were exposed to that Chinese counter, So we learned very early, But these days, the state of education, and I could tell you because I presently teach two small graders, 1/4 and 1/5, and neither of the two can comfortably say their times tables. Big, some of them playing piano on their fingers and still getting it wrong. So the president is a reflection of how far our education system has retrogressed, notwithstanding the enormous resources that has been poured into it over the years and the new systems and technologies and so forth that are available. We didn't have those, but yet we had a fairly good grasp, a fairly good command of English language. And in fact, of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, those were fundamental to the education system. And that helped us to be the envy of the Caribbean, both in terms of our literacy rate and the quality of the product we produce, that we put out from the school system, be it senior schools like Queen's College and so on, or junior secondary schools like Commons Lodge, Charlestown, Annandale, and so on. And these schools existed long before the newer government schools like North Georgetown Secondary, which is still around, South Georgetown Secondary, which I don't know if it's still around, but I know it used to be somewhere in Princess Street, but then they moved. I don't know if South Georgetown is still around. But you know, those days you had East Rhineveld Secondary, very few secondary schools, but a high premium was placed on education. It's unfortunate, but let us hope as we live that things will improve. Because after all, in this fastest growing economy, the only thing that we seem to be able to show for the huge wealth that has come to us over the last 6 years is a bunch of biscuit roads, high-rise buildings that can't, some of them, the breeze, the extra strong breeze of yesterday showed how poorly they were built. But thankful Thursday, always have to be thankful for every day of life. It's another day, another Thursday, thankful to be in the land of the living. And as you know, where there's life, there's also death. And that's how the regeneration takes place. Among some of the famous people who died over the last week from the time we last met was Emil Straker. Emil Straker of the Merry Men of Barbados. These days you don't hear too much about them, but they used to feature prominently in the 70s and the 80s and so on. Emil Straker was the lead of that band. I think he died on Saturday last. You know, I remember going to Barbados. My first trip out of Guyana was with the Scouts Jamboree. Was held in Barbados in 1972. And I left here on BOAC, British Overseas Airways Corporation, the precursor to what we know now as British Airways. BOAC going to Barbados non-stop, taking us there for Jamboree, Scouts Jamboree in 1972. And loud music, the music of the day in Barbados at the time was Merry Men. They had a number of albums out. And also, on the slightly religious side, because Barbados is a highly religious society, on the Christian side, you had Joseph Niles. Joseph Niles, and one of his tunes that I remember listening to, and I love still, is This Train. You remember that? I don't know if you guys remember This Train. This train is a holy train, this train. This train is a holy train, this train. This train is a holy train. Everybody rides in Jesus' name. This train, this train. Yeah, I know I can't sing for my supper, but pretty good tune. So that is Emil Straker, dead from the Merry Men. And as you know, they were in the Caribbean itself. There were 3 outstanding bands that we could remember with outstanding personalities. Emil Straker from the Merry Men. Of course, you had Trade Winds, right? The Trade Winds. And Byron Lee and the Dragonaires. Those 3 bands were like the iconic bands of the Caribbean. And then, of course, on the international scene, we had the death of Alan Greenspan, right? Alan Greenspan died at 100 years old. Well-known former chair of the Federal Reserve of the United States. He is credited with being the architect of the modern American economy and is arguably the greatest central banker produced certainly this side of the century. And lastly, of course, there was the death of iconic Clive Davis at 94 years, the iconic music mogul of the industry, responsible for singers like Whitney Houston, breakout singers like Whitney Houston and Alicia Keys. May their souls rest in peace and rise in glory. Last week, Sunday, was Father's Day. Was supposed to be our day. fathers, and also mothers who perform roles as fathers. You know, we will get our usual supper, special supper, and so on. But I also want to recognize last week's Father's Day for a surprising WhatsApp message I got from an old friend, Colin Quinton. Colin Quinton from Linden, who now lives in the United States, sent me a Father's Day message. Unexpected, because I haven't met Quinton, Colin, since we graduated in 1981, in November 1981. I haven't seen him since. So it was quite refreshing to reestablish contact. And we had a long discussion going through our memories of UG and what is happening here in Guyana. And I was extremely pleased to learn that he listens to this program every Thursday. He says he looks forward to it every Thursday. I was extremely pleased to learn that, Colin. So hopefully you're listening, or later on you're going to get the opportunity to revisit the program and listen at your own pace. Last week too, based on what we discussed, we discussed several topics last week, and more than most in recent times, I had a lot of reactions to the various points that were raised. I will revisit two of them. The first is the issue of passports. Several of those who made contact were in agreement with what I said about the passports, and they couldn't see what the government is now putting in as helping in terms of what is happening right now. But more than that, one person indicated that there is a huge demand for passports of our citizens who live overseas, but that this demand is not being met. And more so, there seem to be a lot of issues involved in applying for a passport when you're overseas and getting that passport. One individual indicated that there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between the overseas consulates and high commissions and the local Foreign Affairs Ministry and Passport Office. I mean, that was that person's conclusion, because try as they did, they still have the same problem, and they still have to make the same excuses to the people who want passports. Now, whether it is true or not, it's an issue that was being raised. And for those who are listening, it is a matter that needs to be addressed. Guyanese, born, naturalized, and otherwise, plus those eligible to become Guyanese by the 4 classes of citizenship that our Constitution recognizes, there is a great demand for these passports for obvious reasons. There was a time when people didn't want to be Guyanese, didn't want to be known as Guyanese, threw away their passports and so forth, mimic new lifestyles that they would have adopted. But all that has changed. There's a huge demand now for Guyana passports. And for the life of me, I cannot see why a passport can be issued. And I'm speaking about the people who are overseas, because I must commend the passport office for the work that they do locally, and in terms of the time that you can get a passport between application and receipt. I think it's just days, couple days, where that is concerned. But it's the overseas people who are suffering. They're the ones who are suffering. And many of them would take the opportunity when they come on to visit to make application, and they will get their passport in no time, 2-3 days. Their expedited passports are also same day. But for the life of them, not many people can travel. They have to do the application process through the consulate and the consul general offices and the honorary consuls and our high commissions and embassies. But the wait is torturous. And that is why I again commending to the government that they send some people to Jamaica or wherever. Just there for a couple of days, 3 days max, and see how the system works there. Online system. A system that would allow people to remain in the United States and in Canada and all of these different places and interact with the passport office in Jamaica and get their passport sent to them without them having to hop on a plane and go to Jamaica. It's a system that is there. We're putting in online passports, then use the best system that is available. So there are those complaints that are out there, and I hope, like I said, we can learn from the best systems, the most efficient systems, the most cost-effective systems, and bring smiles, particularly to the faces of those people those Guyanese who live overseas and demanding passports. There's a second issue in relation to last week, but I will get back to it because I want to get this point out of the way. This morning, I heard this infomercial, GCOM infomercial, where they are announcing that they are now starting another cycle, another round of registration beginning July the 1st. And I hope all those eligible Guyanese, I think it's from 14 years, I would think 14 years and above, will take opportunity to get registered. But that was not the problem. The problem remains with this issue of Commonwealth citizens. In the infomercial, it says, and Commonwealth citizens who have been resident in Guyana for 1 year and over are eligible to register. They're not eligible to register. And I wish more energies of the politicians in the opposition will zero in on this very vexing question. That is not what the Constitution says. And for a constitutional agency like GCOM to be continuously having an infomercial, the identical infomercial that was used last year and seems to be used every time there's a cycle, a new round of registration. The Constitution mandates two things when it comes to Commonwealth citizens. You must be resident for 1 year and over. You must be resident for 1 year and over. And the second one is you must be domiciled in Guyana. So it's residency. If you pass that test, you have to pass the more critical and tougher test of domicile in Guyana. Domicile in Guyana. So when you abusing the Constitution in an infomercial coming out from a constitutional agency. What does it say about us in Guyana generally? What does it say? Can't you just repeat the exact wording and phrasing that is in the Constitution? And this infomercial, as I said, has been around for a while. They just resurrect it, change the date. You are not eligible as a Commonwealth citizen because you have been resident in Guyana for 1 year and above. That is your first test that you must meet. But the second, more difficult one is that you must also be domiciled in Guyana. And I said again, I wish the politicians on the opposition, because this is what the government side has been using. But I wish the opposition will zero in, could stop their fighting for the time being and zero in, all of them, on this particular aspect. Take GCOM to court. The last time we talked about the bitterness, this matter was raised in all the reports of the observer missions from the last elections. The scandalous use of Commonwealth citizens in the last election voting. You had a whole set of them being bussed under armed guard to polling stations. Many of them look like deer in headlight. They don't know what they were doing. They don't know why they were doing it, but they were being bussed. Many of them with one address there in Ogle. The Indians who left a week or 2 or 3 ago, who were found on the quarry, they said they were coerced to vote in our last elections. A typical case of them not meeting the qualifications of Commonwealth citizens, because you see, they're going back. They didn't meet the domicile test, but they voted in the last election. And I wish we will get enough of the politicians to zero in particularly on this matter and not wait for post-elections reports that will tell you the same thing that you should have gone after vigorously in the first place. And by the way, I raise this matter again, and I will ask the politicians to raise it again and again and again. What method does GCOM use to clean the list of Commonwealth citizens who have left the country at the end of their assignment? Because it seems that that is how many of them are on the list. They had an assignment in Guyana that was more than 1 year, and they put them on the list. But what happened to those people when they left Guyana? What is the process that is used by GCOM to clean the list of those persons? Because after all, those persons cannot come under the same clauses or system as outlined by the Chief Justice at the time about how to remove people from the list, how to remove Guyanese from the list. There are any number of Commonwealth citizens who no longer reside in Guyana or are no longer in Guyana who still appear on the list. Why are their names still on the list? What system is used by GCOM to clean the list of those people. I will disclose again. I asked a commissioner, and he could not tell me. In fact, it never dawned on him. So it is clear that there are any number of Commonwealth citizens on that list who no longer reside in Guyana, who are no longer domiciled in Guyana, and whatnot. There's a lot of work to be done. Yes, I know. I know there's so much work, there's so little of you. But you put up your hand for the work. I always say that it's y'all put up your hand for this work. And this is extremely important because it reared its ugly head in the last elections. Are you going to allow that to continue without some more aggressive action other than just talking and press conferences? So I said I was just going to raise that again and let you know, since it's the early stage, to get GCOM at least to remove that infomercial about just being resident in Guyana for 1 year and over. You know, I was speaking about the Father's Day story, and yes, I just remember the other point I wanted to raise about it, how times are changing. Well, of course, we all know we can't compare Father's Day with Mother's Day. The hype for the two are miles apart, miles apart. And this is not a plea for them to come to close the gap or any such thing. A celebration is a celebration, a recognition is a recognition, and so on. But the way how it is presented these days, it's going further and further away from the ones that brought us closer and closer together. I give you a simple example. And it's not only for Father's Day, it goes for a lot of the other celebrations also. You know, years ago, when Christmas Day is coming, or a birthday is coming, or so on, we will go and we will scour our shops, our gift shops, and our other shops for cards, right? Gifts, wrapping paper, and we will wrap gifts and we will write our beautiful words and so on in the cards and things. But what I have noticed over time is that that is gone or is dying. Now you wake up and you get a WhatsApp message from a relative, a friend, a family, or so on. Happy this, happy those, and that was the end of it. And with some meme or something, and that's the end of it. But somewhere along the line, I don't feel the same way. I don't feel the same way as when I receive a physical card. I don't feel the same way. Because a card tells you more than just the card and more than just the words in the card. It tells you that the person was thinking about you well in advance to go and search and get a card that expresses their feelings. Whereas a same day WhatsApp message, you know, tells more of a convenience than anything else. You know why I also bring up this here? One of my graders that I tutor, his birthday was Saturday gone. And I went looking for an appropriate card for an 11-year-old. I searched all over the place. Not only, I eventually found one that was appropriate, but you know, was neither here nor there, but I bought it. But the thing was, one, I have to sort so many places to find this one little card. And two, cards are disappearing in our well-known shops. They're disappearing. I asked about it, and one person said, Mr. Jordan, people ain't buying cards anymore. So we ain't stocking them. What you see here is old stock. And when those done, we're not going to be stocking anymore. We're not going to be restocking cards. So like books, cards are also disappearing. You know what is also disappearing, it seems? Even wrapping paper is disappearing. I had to go looking for wrapping paper too, appropriate wrapping paper. One place all they had was some left back wrapping paper for baby boy and baby girl. Nothing else. I finally ended up at a place there in Hatfield Street where I found an appropriate gift wrapping paper. But I say these things because the little things that said who we are and the little things that add to life and so on, we are either overlooking them to our peril or we don't seem to think that they're worth it anymore. I just raised this. I don't know what are your experiences. I don't know. But I could tell you, I got a lot of cards from different people. Thank you cards, birthday cards, anniversary cards, lots and lots of cards. And in my quieter times, sometimes when I may feel, not in the greatest or so on, I go and browse these cards. I don't know if you have the same experience, but I will go and browse these cards and so forth. That shows you the value of cards, especially when you keep them and not think, well, the occasion done, so throw them out. You will recall your grandmother and your mother would have had shoe boxes where they put a lot of valuables. And when they die and you get an opportunity to go through their prized possessions, you learn a lot about your history from these shoe boxes because they kept the little notes, the little cards, the little mementos, and so on as prized possessions. And so even though they didn't write their history and so on, their history sometimes is in that shoebox. Sometimes you find out inadvertently a relative that you didn't even know that was your relative because of that shoebox. So as we march inexorably in this oil economy, and as we crush everything in sight, including our colonial buildings and so forth, spare a thought for these simple things. Spare a thought for these simple things. Which reminds me, and I should bring it to your attention too, I saw an advertisement in the papers for the sale of a property at Camp and that would be Crowell Street, Camp on Crowell Street, south of the Citizen Bank building. All our Georgetown properties, wooden and concrete, or even concrete, but not the square boxes that we see lining the landscape today. They're all disappearing. one by one. And that store at, I think it's Alim Shah's, yes, property at Crowell and Camp Street, known for cloth. I was hearing, for example, that it was Alim Shah's store that supplied cloth to the Mashomani committee in Linden for our force Mashomani. I know that place well because I used to go there and buy pants linked. Then I will go at the side. There was a tailor at the side there, and I will have him sew my pants. In those days with bell bottoms and so on, I will have him sew my pants. And I do recall also when I went over to Ministry of Finance in 1985, yes, 1985, and I started traveling for the government. I didn't have suits because in those days they didn't allow you to wear suits. They had gotten rid of suits back in the 70s. Bonham got rid of suits, and if you wanted to wear any suit, you had to wear what they call a short jack suit. And I remember traveling, and on that team was Joe Tyndall, who was a former Minister of Trade in the Bonham government and was former Deputy Secretary General. He's the only Guyanese to be in that capacity, because you know Guyanese will never become Secretary General because we have the headquarters, and there's an agreement in principle that no Guyanese will be Secretary General, but we can become deputy. And Tyndall is the first and only Guyanese Deputy Secretary General ever. And he was on that team, and he said to me, and he saw me shivering. He said, "Boy, what you have on there?" He says, "Listen, as you travel, especially in these kind of temperatures, don't worry with what they tell you. Go and buy a suit and make certain your neck is properly protected. Otherwise, you will feel the effects of it." I didn't take his advice about going and buy a suit, but I decided to go and make some short jack suits. And that is where I went, to that tailor at the side there, to buy short jack, to make him buy the cloth and made some short jack suits, and then got what you call cravat and put it there to protect your neck in the suit and so on. I wore those about 1 or 2 times and then decided I had enough of this. Back to the old suits, nobody grumbled, and that's the end of that story. But coming back, so now that store is going to go, and you know what is going to happen? It's going to be replaced by another concrete and glass. On the other side of that trench, you have Citizens Bank imposing headquarters there, concrete and glass. There stood, as I recall, Bank ZIH, a division of Bank ZIH that used to sell bread and all kinds of story. But Bank ZIH itself had bought it from the government, where GNTC, Guyana National Trading Corporation, had a bookstore right down there. And I presume GNTC was something before. And then to the west of that building, on the other side of Camp Street there, where you have Demerara Bank headquarters there, I believe that property was owned by Kissoons at one time. I may be wrong, but I believe it was owned by Kissoons. And the government was renting that building from the Kissoons. And in there, you had the state planning annex, because the state planning building was right there in South Road, where you now have Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Industry. That was state planning's headquarters. And the building east of Ministry of Trade and Tourism was the state planning annex, where we had our computer rooms, and Haslin Paris had his office upstairs there, and there were some other divisions over there and so on. But all our buildings, all our old buildings are disappearing. There's no, this is what hurts because in United States, imagine, they spend so much money restoring buildings and maintaining them. And we pay so much money to go there to see those buildings. But right here, we are destroying our traditions, our cultures, and everything else to put up glass and concrete that nobody in paying to come and see. Look at the monstrosity they're putting up in Brick Dam. Look at the monstrosity that they're putting up in Brick Dam. Where are they going to park anyhow? Where are they going to park? But one time in this country, there were certain building codes. Now, what they're putting up there in Brick Dam, does that bear any relationship, any resemblance, or anything to Georgetown and its architecture? Does it? They're calling it modern, but does it bear any? Modern can exist side by side with our old, traditional, and so on. The effort to maintain the likes of the Town Hall and the St. George's Cathedral are to be commended. It pays off. Every day you pass St. George's Cathedral, you can see how many people are there taking photographs, admiring it, and so on. I don't know that they go and admire the emerging Brick Dam police station. Do they? They go and they admire that. They admire the city hall and so on. The wonderful architecture of these places. But every opportunity we get, we break them down and we put up concrete and glass as a show of modernity. Not realizing that this concrete and glass is contributing to the ozone layer decay, climate change, and all these different things. When you don't allow natural air and natural sunlight as the older buildings allow you, you got to put in AC. AC means ozone layer problems. AC means more electricity. AC means cold when you are supposed to be enjoying the relative heat with the sea breeze that we get. AC means you got to get more car power ships. So whoever is going to buy Alim Shah's building at the corner of Crowell Street and Camp Street, I hope that they will spare a thought for architecture, especially around the place, because around there you also have Brick Dam Cathedral and so on. I still have the imposing Brick Dam Cathedral and so on. And bring back some semblance of architecture. Georgetown is decaying in many respects. And the unfortunate thing is that the mayor and city council, who should have been the protector or one of the protectors of our traditions and architecture in the city, they have been powerless, or they have made themselves powerless, because it is the Georgetown Mayor and City Council who has to approve of the designs and so forth. And so if they are the ones who are approving these glass and concrete, they are also responsible. They are also responsible for what? The mess that we have gotten ourselves into. The government, of course, is ultimately responsible, because you have to understand that you are getting Guyana into a foreign exchange problem. The more concrete houses you build, the more concrete and glass houses you build, because every one of them now has to have at least one air conditioner. Whereas before, that wasn't the case. How does a country with so much forest can't have or become known for its woods and the versatility of the woods? You go to Norway, I've been there, I've been to Norway, and you see what they do with wood. You see what they do with wood. What do we do with our wood? Few people in this country got kilns to dry the wood. And so people are opting for concrete with massive ACs all over the place. Some houses you pass, it's an AC house, 9, 10, 11, 12 ACs in one house. Entire house blocked up. The little breeze that coming from the Atlantic can't pass through. But they said that is modernity. Last week, I sort of like created a firestorm based on some reactions I got on my talk on the development bank. One person approached me and said, Mr. Jordan, can you go it over again? And I said, what? He said, you announced a whole set of monies that was spent over the last 6 years on programs that were supposed to be helping micro and small businesses. He says, I will tell you bluntly, I never heard about any one of them. I never heard about it. So can I go over it again? Explain to us. I can't take the entire time doing that, but I understand what the person is saying. Under the coalition government, as I said, we had a SLED program, Sustainable Livelihood and Entrepreneurial Development Program, in which in the first year, 2015, we had made available $125 million, I think it was, in that short space of time, because you remember our budget, I think, was in August. So $125 million had to be spent in that last 3 months of the year or so forth. The program was designed to assist entrepreneurs in the micro, small sector, ongoing business, new business, startups, and so on. That is what it's supposed. Also, it's supposed to help out cooperatives where they existed, help them to start their businesses in various sectors, agriculture, small industries, and so forth. That was the aim of the program. The program helped a number of people. I remembered, I think it was in 2016 thereabout, there was a graduation of some of the entrepreneurs at the Artichoke Convention Center, in which the president, then president, was in attendance and addressed. I think, if I do recall, some persons who were helped were ex-prisoners and so forth. And every year after 2015, sums were set aside. Sums were set aside for this program to continue the program. I estimate that about 600 to 700 million dollars was put up between 2015 and 2019. 2020, there was no budget from us because of the situation that we had then. I expressed my disappointment ultimately with the program. During last week, I expressed my disappointment because the program seemed to have lost focus. And as expected by the incoming government, they had the Auditor General do a forensic audit of the program, especially for 2019, and his results and his findings were not complimentary in many respects. When the government came in 2020, August, they had their budget and they set aside $105 million for the rest of the year for that program. In 2021, there was no money set aside. COVID was kicking, and I guess a lot of attention had to be paid to getting the society out of COVID. But by time 2022, they had changed the SLED program to a new rural enterprise development initiative. And this was placed under the Ministry of Trade, Tourism, and Industry with a whopping $2 billion set aside. $2 billion set aside for what they call for micro and small entrepreneurial activities. $2 billion. And this is not counting, by the way, funds that were put in the small business fund, also under the Ministry of Trade. We also had a small business fund, $100 million we put in place in 2018. Another $100 million was put in place in 2019, I think it was. But in 2022, they have this thing called Rural Enterprise Development, $2 billion in 2022. In 2023, $500 million. In 2024, $640 million. In 2025, $650 million. And in 2026, there's another $600 million. So that between 2020 and 2026, almost $4.5 billion would have been set aside by this government for micro, small entrepreneurial activities outside of what was being budgeted in other areas, such as the Small Business Fund and the Men on Mission and the President's Purse, which is almost $1 billion. The President's Purse is almost $1 billion. That is where, again, as I explained last week, monies are allocated where the President, at his discretion, as he goes around the place and so on, can allocate monies out of that fund to support activities that he sees there that need some assistance, some immediate assistance. So you got all of these monies that were there. And the man says, I never heard about this. And that is where one of the problems have come in. That is where one of the problems have come in. Communication. So the questions have to be asked today. Who access these monies? $4.5 billion. Who access it? How is the monies accounted for? How many micro and small businesses were helped? Where? What is the regional breakdown of these businesses? What is the sectoral breakdown of these businesses? What is the racial composition of these businesses that were helped? What is the gender of the owners of these businesses? How many people were employed? how much value was added. Because investments can't just be about cutting ribbons and moving on. Investors have to add value. Otherwise, it makes no sense to invest. Investments have to add value. So until these questions and more are asked, we do not know what happened to $4.5 billion. Where is the success story out of the monies that had been allocated over the last 5-6 years? In what businesses? In what areas? How many of these businesses are still in existence? How many of them are still in existence? Have they reached a stage now where they can go to the next level, where you can point them now to go to the Guyana Development Bank? So many questions got to be asked as we fight. I had a long discussion with a party leader, not in Parliament, yesterday. And I said, listen, it seems that we take these things as fait accompli. Nobody is questioning the Guyana Development Bank from the standpoint as to whether we need a bank. Everybody takes it as a given. They don't want to ask the hard questions because the government is going to use it and say, you see what I tell you? They don't want y'all to get the money that we put in aside. But it's not that. And if you're afraid of that framing, then you ought not to be bothering anymore. If you're only thinking how nice you're going to look. So you're going to only say the things that will make you nice, look nice. Nobody is asking what was the study that was done to conclude that indeed you need a Guyana Development Bank. I'm not saying you don't need one. Indeed, all of the proliferation of all of these initiatives without any legal framework, without any transparent actions, without any accountability framework, because there's no way in the Auditor General report that you can pick up and see a report on the spending of these specialized programs answering the kinds of questions that I've just asked. So we just take it as a fait accompli that we need a Guyana Development Bank, and we would not touch it, its reason for existence, because we don't want the government use it as their PR to say, you see what I tell you about them opposition people? They don't want y'all to get any money. But who's the y'all? Who is the y'all? Put the government under pressure of opposition to tell you what happened to this $4.5 billion that they would have spent by the end of 2026. We could take out the 600 million earmark for 2026 and treat with it separately. But you're going to still have almost $4 billion that would have been spent between 2020 and 2025. And if you exclude 2021, that nothing was spent because nothing was allocated, then you're talking about a mere 5 years. A mere 5 years, they spent roughly $4 billion. That is roughly $800 million in small and micro activities every single year. Every single year. Every single year. And if they allocated roughly $1 million to everybody, you're talking about nearly 4,000 people. 4,000 small businesses that should be around the place. And if every small business employed, say, 2 people, that's 8,000. Where are these businesses? Where are these people? Because as surely as night turns today, if you can't give a proper accounting, reporting, transparency, integrity of this money, then all you're doing is rolling that now into the Ghana Development Bank. All you're doing is rolling that now into the Ghana Development. And that hence I asked the question last week, whether these funds will disappear and rolled into the allocation that you have for the Ghana Development Bank. In other words, then, you are targeting $40 billion capital for the Ghana Development Bank. Once that is in place, would these programs disappear? If they're not going to disappear, how are you going to account for the fact that you have a Ghana Development Bank while you're having these parallel activities in the same sector, in the same areas that are proceeding? But those are the questions you got to ask. The ones that are being asked are indeed appropriate, but we have to dig from underneath and come up, because all we are doing right now is asking the questions from the top, because we assume it's a given. As my friend told me yesterday, the law is going to pass anyhow. But that wasn't, as I said, that was not in contention. They got 36 seats, the law will pass. But it is which law is going to pass? The one that they've put out there? Or the one because of your actions, your activism, and so on, force changes? Force changes of the like, that we will end up getting an institution that meets all of the tests outlined internationally. What are some of those tests that such a bank should meet? A development bank, according to the World Bank, should have a clear mandate. Should have a clear mandate. What is our core mandate of the development bank about to be put in? At section 4, it says that the bank will promote and facilitate establishment, growth of small and medium-sized enterprises in Guyana through provision of loans and technical support. That is the clear mandate of the bank. But that bank is only talking about small and medium-sized enterprises. What happened to the micro enterprises? There is no provision in this bank for micro enterprises. Hence, does that give it a reason to think that those initiatives that you got in the budget, those non-transparent initiatives that you got in the budget, they will continue regardless of the fact that the Ghana Development Bank has now been established? Does the lady who sells black pudding on the weekends in Buxton at the line top with her pot out there with the black pudding on a wooden stall, that's a micro enterprise? But she may want to have a stall, a collapsible one perhaps, with a decent outlay, with a water pitcher somewhere around to wash things and so on, with a netting to keep flies and all this thing off and so on. So she may need maybe $400,000 or $500,000. That's a micro enterprise to help her business nice up and so forth. Who's going to help her? That is where the SLED program came in. But you are not treating with micro enterprises according to this mandate that you give in the Guyana Development Bank. You are treating with only small and medium-sized businesses. The Polari lady at Monrepo with a glass case that you can't see through the glass because it's fogged up or it's thing up. It may have signs of mold, which some people ignoring even as they go and purchase. Does that person have to go and get a project proposal to be able to access $500,000 to improve our circumstances, to make it more presentable and so on? These are some of the questions you got to ask. Digging from the bottom. So as far as I'm concerned, they have a clear mandate indeed, but that mandate excludes a class of businesses called micro enterprises. The World Bank also says that a development bank should have some corporate governance. Some corporate governance. When you look at the bill, plus other things that have been put out on this bank, you have serious questions. On the bill itself, everybody has recognized that the minister with responsibility for finance is the one who is solely responsible for appointing every one of the directors. And in fact, the way how it is set up there, about, I think, 5 and no more than 9 directors and so on, we should get rid of that. Get rid of it. 5 and no more than 9. Get rid of it. Have a fixed number of directors. The board shall have, let us say, 10 directors. 10 directors, of which 6 will make a quorum. 6 in attendance will make a quorum. You could specify whoever else you want. Having said that now, certain directors shall be specified in terms of their of a particular category. So, for example, one director must be, at least one director must be, for example, a woman. One director must be representative of the youth. One director must be representative of the small business sector. One director must come from the opposition. It is not about politicizing the board, because after we say all of that, some directors should have certain basic qualifications, minimum qualifications. It's not because you say one director must come from the opposition means that they go there and represent opposition interests. What is opposition interest anyhow on a bank? What will be the opposition's interest on a bank? The idea is that you want to make certain in an oversight role and a participatory role that the bank's mandate is interpreted widely as opposed to narrowly, and that all applicants are treated fairly in the context of the criteria established by the bank. You know, I said already, and I think by now everybody figures this out. Not everybody. Don't let me put everybody. Significant number of people figure it out. The PPP believes Guyana is their plantation to do as they please. And if perchance anybody other than the PPP gets an opportunity to rule, they will make life extremely difficult for them because they see them as interlopers. Just check what they did in the context of the coalition government. They made a lot of noise about the Natural Resource Fund and the different committees and the government and the minister who are appointing this and appointing that. But whether it was the minister or the president, they were appointing nominees, not representatives, nominees of different sectors. Whether it was the banking association, whether it was the opposition, whether it was the private sector commission. So that even though somebody has to appoint these people, but it wasn't the picks of the people who were making the appointment. These people were coming from different people, but they made a lot of noise that gullible people, without reading the bill, the 2019 bill, accepted as fact. And this notwithstanding all of the different explanations that we went out there and so on. But when they got it out for you and when they occupy large chunks of the press, they ultimately end up getting their message across while they drowned out your message. Because you could check the 2019 bill of the Natural Resource Fund. You had representatives coming from the Guyana Bankers Association on one of the committees. You had representatives coming from the Bank of Guyana. You had representatives coming from the Private Sector Commission, representatives coming from the leader of the opposition, and so on. Go check it, you will see. And all these people, once they come together, had to be appointed by somebody. Appointed by the president, right? Or appointed by... I'm surprised even that the minister in this bill, the ministers appointing directors. Because the way how it is done is that the minister may take a cabinet memo to cabinet, identifying potential directors in accordance with the law, because the law would have said one must come from the X place, one must come from Y place, and so on. And it is the cabinet that gives approval. And when cabinet gives that approval, those members are gazetted. Those members are gazetted. And then they will get their appointment instruments as directors. So even though the law may say the minister may appoint, minister will do the appointing, at least this is circumscribed by certain criteria that is set out there. But not this law. Not this law. It looks like he could pick anybody he wants to become directors of the board. So this particular part has to change, The directors must be clearly identified. And this business about picking directors in their deliberate thing, that also must go. That also must go. But if it is retained, then we must say precisely the qualifications that these directors must have and will bring to the board. So if the minister may pick 4 of the 10 directors in his own deliberate judgment, It must go on to say these directors must have skill sets in technology, engineering, accounting, and so on. But you don't pick 4 of your friends, because this is not about maintaining the upper hand in board decisions. This is about a taxpayer's $40 billion. And we got green taxpayers, we got purple taxpayers, we got red taxpayers, we got all kinds of taxpayers. And somewhere along the line, they must have some level of representation there, or some level of confidence that their constituency is being represented adequately on that board. So that whole structure that they have there, or that they don't have, has to change. Take a cue from the Natural Resource Fund 2019. And I would want to see the opposition not give up, because that is what has been done over the last 6 years on all the boards, where they fail to leave a space, one space, for the opposition. Just one. There is no board that I know of where the opposition has been called upon to name one person on the board, not one. Don't allow this bank to go down the same road, because then what you're doing is not the Guyana Development Bank you're going to have. You're going to have the Guyana Piggy Bank, where taxpayers' money will be available to friends, family, and favorites. So don't let them run around the tongue and holler, Guyana Development Bank is coming, prepare for it. Your experience as a significant section of this country, the experience has been is that they have been shut out. They have been shut out of cash grant, many of them holding pink slips, still from the first cash grant. They have been shut out from sectoral grants. The government sees fit to continuously giving grants to the rice sector, but they don't see it fit to give grants to the provision farmer who is being flooded out, the farmers in Moko who can't even access their lands, the farmers in Buxton, BV, Triumph, all these different places, Ithaca, that suffering severe flooding. They run to rice every single year and give them cash grant. They run to give fisher folk. Who on earth are these people? Only the good Lord knows how they define fisher folk. But they go and find a way of giving these people cash grant. But it seems there's only one set of people is going fish. So a significant section of the population, and all of us knows which section, gets shut out from all of these government programs. And I have no reason to believe it's not going to happen at the bank, especially if the law remains where the minister picking all the people. And then the other aspect of sound corporate governance. There's several aspects, but I can't deal with all of them. The other aspect has to do with the way they are configuring the organizational structure of the bank. Like I said, I'm waiting on my friend to publish his letter or whatever before I open out on it. But when you look at what they have put out there, it's laughable in any modern organization. In that structure, technical officers and the credit officers are bypassing the CEO and going straight to the board. Go check and you will see. These two critical officers, the technical officers and the credit officers, don't have a link with the CEO. They go straight to the board. Now, as far as I know, the only people who can lie outside of that framework are the auditors. The auditors, they report directly to the board or send their reports direct or whatever. But they don't have no thing where they come under the CEO and so on. But no, in this structure that they have just put out, they got the credit officers and technical officers reporting directly to the board. There is no line, broken or otherwise, going to the CEO. And yet the CEO is the responsible officer for the entire bank. He ain't got no input, it's the board. And after the credit officer reported to the board gonna instruct him. The board will instruct him or her. What nonsense. And while we still are under corporate governance, like I said, there's more to be saying because it's a convoluted chart. It's an extremely convoluted chart, right? I don't know who put it together or which AI they asked to put it together. It doesn't provide for numbers. It doesn't provide for numbers of different categories of people. And then it doesn't say about the branches, where the branches will be. Even at this stage, where the branches will be. Where you're going to set up the branches and how the branches are going to interact with the head office. And what will be the level of responsibility for the branch manager in terms of his or her ability to approve a loan or recommend a credit and so on. Those aren't there. They have these little chippy things that they're setting out, putting out in the public now and then. And leaving you gasping. And they have these people they're picking up from all over the place. Oh, what do you think about the Guyana Development Bank? Oh, I think it's a lovely idea. Oh, I think it's the best idea since they made sliced bread. Thanks to the Orphan Alley administration. All of these things. But the great bulk of the people who will be borrowing from this bank, the small and medium people, nobody's educating them. And I have to commend Peeping Tom, whoever he be, on his recent criticism of the private sector, the private sector bodies. I think it was the GCCI. You're not helping these people, but telling them, go and prepare for the bank is coming. What on earth you're doing to them? What is it that you're telling them? Go and prepare, the bank is coming. What does that mean? So you got all of these problems and issues. But I am saying the opposition, notwithstanding anything that I say today, the bill is going to pass. It just depends on what gets passed. The bank is going to be a reality. So on that premise, you got to make certain that your constituency is educated. The government ain't going to educate them. They are already there in the different villages educating their people. Yeah, they're discriminating. But yours ain't getting a peep in. You got to go and help those people understand what the development bank is about, what this one, to the best of your knowledge, understanding, and begin to sign them up. A whole literacy education program has to be developed quickly for them, because that will be used as the excuse by the bank not to lend them money because they know how to manage money. They know how to manage project. They have their necessary paperwork in place. Whether it's registering the business, NIS compliance, GRA compliance, this compliance, that compliance. Would all of these be shelved for the time being or not? No? Then you got to go and get these people. I'll tell you something, why this thing got some teeth. The Small Business Fund that has been set up, there's a Small Business Act. If you register on the Small Business Act, you can get all kinds of concessions. But you know what? You had hell to play to get small businesses to register under the Act. Why? Because many of them want to remain under the radar. They want to remain under the radar because they're paying taxes perhaps. Once you get registered, you attract the attention of the taxman. So they're paying tax, so they don't want your concessions. How do you overcome that kind of behavior? You know, you got Ali and all them run wrong and saying, oh, there are people with thousands of ideas. Then you're sending out call for expressions of interest or ideas. Those who have ideas submit. What foolishness is this? You have $40 billion you set aside. You set aside $40 billion and you don't know you haven't outlined the strategic approach of investing this money. That is why it will be renamed Guyana Piggy Bank. So yes, it may have a clear mandate, but it excludes the micro enterprises. The corporate structure needs a lot of work because according to the World Bank, you have to have a sound corporate governance structure. That bank in terms of it doesn't have. Then it has to have, according to the World Bank, the third one is that you must have appropriate instruments and funding structures. Now, this here is an interesting one. Appropriate instruments and funding structures. Well, as far as we know, this bank is almost exclusively funded by the government. Okay, the government said $40 billion. Ali and his government is promoting the bank as an interest-free bank. In other words, then, they are going to lend you up to $3 million without interest. But there is a section of the law, as it's presently framed, that talks about the bank may or may not lend with interest. In other words, then, they may charge you interest or they may not charge you interest. The law does not say under what conditions will they be charging interest and under what conditions they will not be charging interest. There's also in the law that says the bank may or may not lend with collateral. Again, it does not say under what circumstances it will lend with collateral, that you will be required to have collateral, and under what circumstances would you be required. These things are too arbitrary. They're too arbitrary. Can you imagine if this is left to a board rather than put in the law? What will happen to a significant section of this population who don't have collateral? Can you imagine? And don't run away from any idea, even if a bank is not lending with collateral, because collateral, in this, as we know it, is really immovable assets. it's really immovable assets. That's how we knew it, and that's how banks generally lend, right? They ask you, do you have collateral? Yes. Bring your transport or bring your long-term lease or something in the sort. But the government passed a bill a year or two ago that allows for lending that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have fixed assets as collateral. And although that was the formal structure, I can tell you, as I said before, I'll tell you again, that Guy Bank was doing that long before such a bill was put in place. And that is why it has its trepidations, and the commercial banks, although they signal their interest in that last bill, they haven't been too keen to implement. Because the experience of Guy Bank that resulted in a lot of its bad debts, well, some, and I don't use the word lot, some of the bad debts, is that Guy Bank would lend particularly rice farmers. Yeah? That bank, Guy Bank, you see people hollering how thing and so on. Somebody's going to write the history of that bank, and you'll find out who broke that bank. You will find out which sector broke that bank. Anyway, they will lend particularly to rice farmers. A lot of these rice farmers only leasehold, or they're renting from people who they're in the United States or Canada or wherever else they're there. They're renting, so they don't own the land. They can't bring those capital, but they're planting rice. So what Guy Bank would do is a combination of putting a lien on the proceeds, the expected proceeds, and a lien on the capital equipment that they will buy. A lot of those rice farmers sold rice into the European market. When some of them defaulted, and you move towards getting or repossessing the equipment, very often was a tractor or a combine, you got any number of problems. One, you can't find the equipment or tractor. Two, that tractor, if you found out eventually where it is, nobody wants to go there for fear of their life. Three, if you found the tractor, it's in an inserviceable condition. Four, even if it's in a serviceable condition, Guy Bank is a bank. It's not a warehouse. So where are you going to keep these stuff while you get the legal permission to sell them? And even though you took a lien on the proceeds, that also had its issues. So the point is, this kind of non-collateral lending was taking place before. Now it can, even though they are saying here with collateral or without collateral, it doesn't necessarily mean that the bank is not going to fortify itself by some other means. So don't get tricked by the word no collateral. They may still, under the new law, request assignment of sales receipts, assignment of equipment to be bought with a loan, or even other things other than land and so on that come under the new bill that they put in place. And this whole concept of zero interest is not new either. It's not new. The Islamic Bank, of which yours truly is proud to say, took Guyana in 2016 in the meeting of the Islamic Development Bank in Indonesia. Guyana became that bank's latest member, Islamic Bank. The Islamic Bank doesn't charge you interest, zero interest, but the other charges is just like if they charge you interest or more. So we haven't heard the last of this zero interest. They may not be charging zero, they may not be charging you interest, but somewhere along the line, they may be charging you commission, fees, and other charges that may very well amount to an interest in disguise. Because that has not been made clear. Too many things they have in this bill that they said will be developed under the credit policies. We don't want that because this bank is not coming under the Financial Institutions Act. So as clear as day, everything has to be put in the bill. We aren't waiting for credit policies. And when those credit policies are developed, they must be brought to the Parliament as regulations guiding the bank. So we know they have the legal frame and cannot be arbitrarily changed unless they went back to Parliament to change it. Credit policies could change because they can go to the board and change it. We don't want that. We want all them credit policies and other things become regulations that have to be approved in the Parliament. So a lot of this got to be explained. Because why? If the bank is not charging interest at all, how is the bank financing itself? Clearly then, it's going to finance itself by eating away at its capital. Now, which business in the entire world finances itself by continuously running down its capital? After the capital gone, what? What? Because when you account for things like bad debt, and there will be high bad debts in any development bank, and especially if you're selling the bank. If you're selling the bank as a piggy bank, then what is the penalties for not repaying? In the United States, they have your credit score and so forth. You know, they have the different laws that could thing. You have to declare bankruptcy, and you know, when you declare bankruptcy in the United States, you know, you have your own thing and so. Here, you don't even hear about the credit rating agency. I was asking somebody a day whether the credit rating agency is still in Guyana and whether they use credit scores. They said no. Person said no, we don't use credit scores. We just give credit and so on. But what happened to the credit rating agency in Guyana? They used to be in Newmarket Street. I don't know if they're still there, but I don't know. I know the law is still on the books. But how many people, how many banks, how many loans are taken without obtaining credit score? And what does it mean to have a low credit score in Guyana or no credit score? What is the implication of credit? What is the implication for you borrowing? What is the impact of not repaying the Guyana Development Bank? Because, as I said, they are selling this thing as free money when this is hard-earned taxpayers' money. Hard-earned taxpayers' money. They are selling it as if it's their piggy bank for them to withdraw and use as they see fit. So we have those issues. And then, of course, the World Bank also talks about robust risk management. Again, a development bank must have robust risk management. Robust risk management. Well, again, it goes back to what I've been saying. A development bank takes on risks that a commercial bank would not take on. Particularly in the agricultural sector with pests, inclement weather, and all these different uncertainties. Commercial banks that has to have a return to show to its shareholders and its depositors don't engage in highly risky projects. Development banks do. However, even those banks put in place structures to mitigate risks. Some I see, based on what is being said, that there will be officers there to teach people and hold their hands. There will be mentors and so on. But you are telling the people, the government, the government telling the people, if you have an idea, now is your time to bring that idea to fruition. You see, I often, when I hear these things, I said that is the reason you got the gold program. Another 3,000 plus, they graduated 2 days ago. When you look at the breakdown of those 3,000 and something people that they just graduated, you ask how many of the skills, whatever they may be, on these universities that only who knows who know of their existence. How many of those skills are needed in Guyana? Number one. And number two, of the ones that are needed, whether they have found jobs. As far as we are aware, there has never been a trace study of the 54,000 plus people that they claim who have been trained under the GOLD program. People with certificate in cooking, needlework, painting, airbrushing, all of these different things. A modern economy is wasting its money on non-priority things, while the priority areas get glossed over. Why? Because it is easy to cut a ribbon with 800 certificate people, or to tie a bow with 800 people who have just graduated with a certificate in cake making and so on, than 5 people who have just got petro something engineering to help us on those FPSOs. But I digress. I will use another time, because I this morning somebody asked me what is my take on the GOLD program and all. I said I did many programs of those already, and I wasn't intending to come back and do more of it, because mine is very clear. The intent of the program is good, its implementation is poor. And to be feeding people a bunch of degrees and so on that have questionable acceptance, even right here in Guyana, because large numbers of the private sector people are refusing to even recognize those degrees right here in Guyana. So we are condemning those people. We are condemning those people. And just before I leave this topic, I will ask the government and the gold people to make available in some repository all the PhD theses and master's theses that have been written over the last 4 years or whatever, because according to numbers, over 400 and something people have already graduated with PhD degrees. So in the richness of things, let us have available all those theses someplace where, maybe in the National Library, where access can be, where we can access those theses to help in research and so on. We would have been holding down a whole set of people over the last 4 years because 400 of them have been able to complete their PhDs in the last 4 years, over 400. So let us make it available to the education. Let us make it available, those theses available to the University of Guyana. Let us make it available to the National Library and so on, so we could have the benefit of their research. We can't have those universities out there where they be having the people's theses and they're not being made available here. But like I said, I digress. When you come back to the risk management that they were saying, it looks like they are going to, if you got an idea, as they said, bring it. We can develop it into a project and we can finance it. Now, the danger with that is the questions we asked earlier. Is it relevant to Guyana? What will it add to Guyana? What value will it bring to Guyana? You are going to risk something without knowing whether it's a priority, which is what part of the problem you have also with this statute of the bank. Guy Bank had in its name the three broad sectors of focus. The cooperative sector, which is a broad heading, because on the cooperatives you could have fishing, farming, manufacturing, all kinds of things. Cooperative is just a question of it's a form, a business structure as opposed to a sector. It's a business structure, right? Just like sole trader and so on, you have cooperatives. But cooperative is in the name of the Republic of Guyana. So you have the cooperative sector. But in the name, it was agriculture and industry, including agro-industry and so on. But this bank has no sector of focus. It has no sector of focus. So therein lies the problem. If I am a painter or an artist, could I go to the bank and get $5 million or $3 million so I could buy a set of easel and paintings, paint materials and so on, and set up shop in the Avenue of the Republic in Main Street and do my paintings and hope that passers-by would like it and buy it and be able to give me a revenue and a return for me to be able to repay the $5 million? So I could have the greatest of mentorship. I could have the greatest. If there is no market for your idea, how are you going to be repaying the loan? Is the government guaranteeing to purchase your output in order for you to be able to repay the bank? If not, how is the bank going to be able to get back its money once it allows you to pursue your idea? And I'm not saying that there's a issue. The arts must have a fair share. They have not got their fair share. But this is the point I'm making. The bank has not identified critical sectors. It has not identified priority sectors. But I can tell you, as night turns today, the preoccupation with the bank will be about the agriculture sector, specifically rice. As night turns today, you would have heard it on this program. They aren't telling you what are the priority sectors, they're hiding it. They're not making that very clear. But you know who's going to be the biggest borrowers from this thing? Rice. Rice is in trouble. Rice is in trouble. Government been bailing out rice every single year for the last couple of years. So they're going to throw rice onto there. But if I were in this position here, rice is a highly developed sector. Even the government tell marginal farmers, you should think about divesting. Rice is a commercial crop. So spare rice from going to the development bank with your only your $40 billion. This brings us to another. Well, let us stay with what I was talking about just now. Yes. Let us stay with that. The whole issue about crowding out. It is clear that you are now competing with the commercial banks. Profitable projects that are based on cash flows and so on should be able to sell their ideas to the commercial banks. But now they are now having an avenue with a zero interest bank. So in many ways, the bank is competing with the commercial bank because it's $40 billion. It's not like when Guy Bank had a thing. This is $40 billion to lend. And if we exclude rice, keep them at the commercial banks and so on, it will be a large number of people who could access it, but they're not going to exclude rice. So who is going to go to iPad? iPad with their interest rates that are not necessarily attractive, but you were forced to go there because there was no other facility. Who's going to go to iPad? iPad will not survive when the Ghana Development Banks come on stream. They will not survive. And do you know what? iPad had a very low debt rate, even though the interest rates were fairly high. People paid back. They had a high repayment, success rate of repayment. But now, this is government. This is government. Government said zero interest rate. So who's going to go to iPad? So it's going to crowd out private sector activity in that regard, even as it will be creating market distortions. Because people, if they had to face the market, would have presented projects where the return will be in excess of what the loan cost would have been. Here, it's zero. So projects that you would not even have contemplated gets back into here. It creates a distortion in the market, the market for lending and the market for capital. A zero interest rate will also create what in the economic jargon is called a moral hazard. A moral hazard. What is the moral hazard in this case? Well, a zero interest rate doesn't impose the discipline on the borrower. Doesn't impose the discipline on the borrower. Because he knows if he defaults and he doesn't pay back, the penalties are not harsh, they're not there. The government will have to step in under whatever instruments that are created and replenish the bank. It's like insurance. It's like insurance. The argument is without insurance, you will behave in a particular manner. But as soon as you get insurance, you behave in a manner injurious because you know the insurance is going to pay. If I ain't got insurance, if I insurance, I gotta make certain all them stove torn off and this and that and that. I can do everything in my power to make certain I don't contribute to the burning down of my building. But if I got adequate insurance, that same discipline is not there. It's a moral hazard this bank is going to create. So the whole issue about robust risk management is not inherent in this loan. And I'm not waiting for any credit policies or so on. This law is a bare bones law. And perhaps it has been set up in this manner to leave the powers in the hands of the handpicked board of directors. And we should not allow that. We should not allow it. And the fifth criteria for a development bank, according to the World Bank, is that it must have a strong legal and regulatory framework. Well, there you go. The bank is not coming under the Financial Institution Act. The bank is not coming under the Companies Act. The bank is only going to operate under the law that puts it in place. Hence, it must have a very strong legal and regulatory framework, because that is what is going to be governing this bank. That law, that Guyana Development Bank Act. And so that act must not be restrictive. It must be expansive. Expansive. And further, the minister must be able to make regulations for the orderly development and efficient functioning of the bank. And in those regulations, it will be explained even more, right down to the last detail, what forms that you'll have to fill up to apply for a loan, what forms you have to use for project appraisals and all these different things, right down to that, it will be in the regulations. If there's a reason why, for the most part, in the world, development banks have not been successful. Throughout the Caribbean, show me a development bank that has survived. It has not. Because as I said, development banks take on a lot of risks, but they have become political institutions. In almost every case, they have become political institutions. It's a place where you send someone to get a loan, which you know is not going to be repaid. But it's a political friend who could bring another 10 more votes, and so on. And like I said, there are other implications, many of it that defies market determination. You bring in thousands of people to access the bank. What will they be producing? Where will they be selling what they produce? Are they going to be filling gaps, or are they going to be producing the same pepper sauce, jams, jellies, macaroni, whatever the case may be? Unless you have clear policies in place to push where you want the investment to go, then all you're going to have is my good friend in his interpretation of what the bank could do. He says, well, we could open hardware stores, which is buy and selling. It's not manufacturing anymore, it's buy and selling. Right? We could buy sand truck and fetch sand. Right? That's a business idea. For all of these business ideas, you've got to go to the commercial bank, because those are commercial activities that comfortably, if you put together something and the bank agrees that, yes, you want to open a hardware store, here, we could give you $100 million, but let me see your collateral. This time it's collateral. And you could go and buy whatever you want, but we can get your house or your car or your land or whatever the case may be. So no, a development bank of the kind that we are hoping for doesn't mean that you have to ignore all the safeguards, the oversights, and so on to make that bank successful. I ain't got no problem with you lending at zero interest rate if you want. But it's the message you sending. It's the message you sending. If somebody wants to develop a filtration system, I ain't got no problem lending the person at zero interest rate once the product appears to be viable and it will result in the release of foreign currency or some import substitution or some export promotion and so on. Those are the issues and the policies that we have to take into account to make this bank a success. Otherwise, it will be a Guyana piggy bank. No question about that. All right? So, yeah, so we have come to the end of this session. We're almost to close off. Next week, we'll just, if there's anything left that I didn't cover, I will just quickly run them through, and then we will look at the supplementary. Provision. You know, the boys them gonna be coming. That big breeze that blowed yesterday, and that earthquake that happened in Venezuela that caused the ripple here in Guyana. Condolences to all those people who have died, because they're finding more and more there. And those buildings collapse like matchsticks. But spare a thought for our stadium at Anna Regina. It didn't even open yet. And the breeze ripped out a roof on that stadium there. What does it say about climate smart buildings, climate resilience, and proper building codes being in place? The breeze then lift up a number of other places, all them old roof and thing that nailed down properly and so on. They survive. But this one here, that ain't even open yet, ripped out. And so the boys are going to be coming for supplementary again. They're going to be adding to this paper. they're going to be adding to this paper that already is a humongous. But we will deal with that and more as we see how things develop over the week or so. In the meanwhile, take care and be safe. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Yet another informative session. More than enough information, and thank you viewers for tuning in. See you tomorrow for Free Talk Friday. Be safe, be good. Remember to share the information for the protest. Share the information for the protest. Share the information for the protest. It's the 6th of July. CARICOM Day. I can't tell you all enough. Have a good day and be safe. Goodbye.